release the Marc Webb cut.
Hello and welcome to Minority Arts Appreciation Society podcast. So we're ticking all the boxes and bringing a much needed minority perspective to popular internet discourse. I'm Josh and my pronouns are he and him, and usually I lead the music discussions, but today on our Switcheroo episode, I'm leading a film discussion. As you can probably tell by the choice of film. And Matty?
I'm Matty, my pronouns are she and her, and in Josh's stead, I normally lead the film discussions, but today I'm handing over that mantle to him, graciously.
Wonderful. I'm super excited to talk about the wildly controversial, weirdly discourse-heavy 500 Days of Summer. Quite possibly like one of the most talked about rom-coms, from the 2000s. Like when I think 2000s rom-coms like had real staying power on like internet discourse, 500 Days of Summer is really up there. Along with How I Met Your Mother, which isn't really a rom-com, that's like a sitcom, I guess.
Yeah, but, definitely if a rom-com was like a televised and laugh track sitcom, it is How I Met Your Mother.
Yeah, it's basically a rom-com, except it's like 500 hours long.
Yeah, 500 hours of summer.
Oh, Jesus. And now time to turn to Marc Webb, another male director who made a film about being a guy. We kind of did this. Was it last week of Enemy? Did Enemy come out last week?
Enemy probably was last week. Yeah, almost definitely.
We already did this. We did this last week for Enemy, another film that's actually extremely similar to 500 Days of Summer, I think, in terms of being about a male view of women, right? Mm-hmm. And kind of trying to deconstruct how men view women.
Absolutely, yeah.
So I guess to give some background to why I picked this film for my Switcheroo, because I only get to do this once every 10 episodes. So. Once every 20 episodes, even.
They are. When you get to lead a Switcheroo, it's a rare thing. And you should treasure it.
So, this film is something that meant a lot to me when I was a preteen. It was like the prototype of what my music and film taste would go on to be until now.
Yeah.
This, like, when I was put yourself in my shoes, like you're 12 years old, your favorite, or 12 or 11 years old, or 10, around that age. I'm pretty sure my favorite film was like Spider-Man 3 still. I hadn't fully like discovered that I liked films and music, you know? I liked what was on the radio. I liked what my parents took me to go see in the cinema and what was on like Sky 1 at 8 p.m, right?
Yeah.
Like, that when you're a kid, and the first passion I had was, I guess, video games, like history of Nintendo. I was really into the like Nintendo history and reading Edge magazine. And then after that, honestly, it was 500 Days of Scum. 500 Days of Scum. I'd love to watch that film. Like Hobo with a shotgun, but a rom-com. Anyway, 500 Days of Summer is, along with like, Fight Club and Scott Pilgrim, are the early films I remember of like watching a film and being like, holy shit, I didn't know you could do that kind of thing.
That's such early Josh core. That's beautiful.
Yeah.
When you said Fight Club and then you said Scott Pilgrim, those films should not go together in any way, but they really did.
But when I was 13, those are films that really were like, oh shit, this is like, as someone who like was raised on, I saw Iron Man when I was 8 years old at cinema, and that blew my fucking mind. Like these films opened me up to kind of more alternative, I guess, kind of stuff, right?
Yeah.
So watching this film, with the indie soundtrack with Regina Spektor and Pixies and Smiths and Feist, artists who I'd go on to adore. This is like the main type of music I like now, as well as the out of chronology storytelling and the anti-romance kind of angle, which heavily inspired probably my love for like my favorite films now, Blue Valentine and the Before trilogy. which kind of have a similar deconstructive approach to romance, which conclude on like a shrug of like, is it good that these people are together, kind of thing. So, and this was like the 13-year-old boy's entry to that kind of world. And another bit of contextualization is I was a huge. I hadn't seen New Girl yet, so this is my first Zooey Deschanel picture, other than Elf, I guess, which I'd seen at this point, which Zooey Deschanel was also in.
That really fucks me up that Zooey Deschanel was in my life so early.
Because she's blonde in that film, so it doesn't feel like
it's wrong. That's not prime Zoe. Yeah.
But when I was 13, my favorite sitcom at the time was How I Met Your Mother. You know, a show which I hate with a passion now. I think it's a disgusting show.
Absolutely vile, like genuinely venomous.
100%. But when I was 13, you know, and getting into like romance like that, I really loved it. You know, I was a kid, right? And this film, I feel at the time, I don't know if I realized this at the time, but it is 100% like a complete subversion of the How I Met Your Mother kind of tropes in terms of like Ted in that show is portrayed as someone who is like earnest and out for love, and he's such a nice guy, and you know, you're meant to see him in like a really positive light. And this is a film where the main character has the same problem with Ted of like projecting romance and fantasy onto women in his life.
Architect.
Except he's even an architect. Oh my god, it's the same guy. Except of course, Marc Webb doesn't present Tom in as pretty of a way as Ted. No. Like Tom is actively, obviously dislikable at points in this film in a way that Ted isn't. And even the opening narration of this film kind of sets up this idea that Tom projects his feelings about destiny and love onto Summer, and this is corroborated by, you know, all the filmmaking tactics. So I don't know if I fully registered that at the time, but this is really Taxi Driver meets Annie Hall, like in terms of Taxi Driver's unreliable narrator and Annie Hall's telling a love story post breakup, like trying to remember what happened. And yeah, I loved it when I was 13. When I was 13, I loved this. And I'm going back to it was scary because I thought about it a lot, and I haven't watched it for like 7 or so years. But I thought about it a lot. And I remember at that age, I really did unironically relate to Tom. I really was like Tom. Which I think is okay for like a 12, 13-year-old.
It says a lot about like Tom.
Growing pains.
It says an awful lot about Tom.
When I went for a breakup, I liked to watch this film because I wanted to be like Tom, and Chloe Grace Moretz was going to tell me that, you know, just because she likes the same bizarre crap as you doesn't mean she's your soulmate, and then I'll feel better after I finish the film, you know. It was always like my feel better after a heartbreak film. So it was near and dear to my heart, and it was scary to return to it. You know, what if it's actually horrifying and horrible?
Yeah.
But yeah, that's my history of the film. How about you?
None. Like no history. It's the first. I think it's like the first time I've had just no history with something that isn't a music review, which is nice. But yeah, I just never watched it. I've never been into rom-coms. I've never been. Actually, I think that's the most important thing to set up going into this. I think this is the most rom-com movie we've ever done. And,
it's a straight part rom-com.
And I don't like hate rom-coms, but I think I probably would say I'm more on the skeptical end of the spectrum, because I would say I'm skeptical of like Hollywood schmaltz, and rom-coms are a genre where that is very easy to show up, but I'm definitely open to this kind of thing. So yeah, I think I'll just try and leave it there before I ramble on anymore about not having an opinion.
And you know, before I give a plot summary of the film, I think I said that when I was 13, I really related to Tom because I was a 13-year-old boy, and I think most 13-year-old boys raised in a culture think like Tom, which is one of the points of the film. That has just the big manifesto of the film. But now coming back to it, I was excited. I was like, okay, I'm not going to get the same emotional catharsis I used to get from this of like, oh, I got rejected, I have to watch 500 Days of Summer to feel good about myself again. But I was looking forward to seeing Summer because now I relate a lot more to Summer. Like I kind of became the sad, cynical child of divorce person who like watches Blue Valentine and is like, love ain't no good.
Look at those damn lovebirds. Oh, shit.
Like Summer is in the beginning of her arc in this film, and the situation Summer's in this film of trying to of telling someone that she wants one thing and them just projecting and not listening, and then getting very angry at her, and then someone being like, "Well, I experienced that in my adult life," and so I was super excited to see how that's kind of portrayed and what it's going to be like relating more so to Summer. In fact, the part where Tom is airing his grievances on like a date he's on, and she's like, did she cheat on you? And she was honest about what she wanted, and she never manipulated you.
Yeah,
I felt so seen and validated by that portion of the film. As now a summer person who is Summer in all ways but physical. No, but so that was an angle I was really excited to come from.
Yeah,
but yeah, but as we get into the discussion proper of this film, I'll give a quick plot synopsis. So 500 Days of Summer is as the narrator says, not a love story. It's a kind of obsession fueled, vehemently from Tom's perspective, retrospective on a relationship that went bad. It opens with him smashing plates, and then sitting down to explain to Chloe Grace Moretz like what happened with Summer. So the film kind of jumps around random days in their relationships, from them meeting to them like arguing, to the good memories and the bad memories. It's all very Annie Hall. If you've seen Annie Hall, this is pretty much an Annie Hall. It's the same structure as that film, complete with doing kind of gimmick scenes, like a random musical number, or showing the same scene from two different like timelines. Very Woody Allen shit. And the film concludes with Tom, who started off super idealistic, become very angry and bitter from his breakup with Summer and giving up on love, and Summer, who started off pessimistic and kind of cynical about love, actually finding love, and realizing that part of life can be open to her. So that's kind of the arc the film goes through. That's the plot of the film. And yeah, 500 Days of Summer. Yeah, how did this hit you? What did you think of it? How did you feel watching it?
With this film, I was very much approaching it as, like, this film is going to be one of two things, or this film is going to be a deconstruction of Tom and, like, the kind of person and the kind of environment that creates Tom. And I want to know if it's how critical it is and how it resolves his journey, because this is a 3-act rom-com. He's got to have an arc. So how does the film specifically show him going from point A to point B? Because I mean, these like kind of guys are so important right now in discussion, like soft boys and things like that. Like so I don't know, it just felt going into it really timely and like interesting. So, to put it bluntly, I basically just wanted to see if Tom was an arsehole or not. Me and Josh have been thinking a lot recently about film showing bad people doesn't always mean that the film is saying that's a good person. And I say that because I think there is a real thing, like we were talking about Malcolm and Marie, of just film has bad person in it, so I'm going to like stop thinking about it because the film is saying that person's a good person, and I don't want to like engage with a film that thinks that. But there's a massive leap on the person's part to assume that the film is saying that is a good person.
Yeah.
So I wanted to see if this film was saying that Tom is a good person.
It's like Iron Man versus Spec Ops: The Line. Like those two characters are doing the same stuff.
Exactly.
But Spec Ops is clearly like a critique, and Iron Man is like very unironic.
Yeah, completely. So, what I think, to just come out and say it, I think this Tom does think Tom is an asshole. Like, I think you couldn't like that's not a fresh statement. I think the first 45 minutes shows him to be unequivocally an asshole who hangs out with bigoted, sexist assholes that are meant to be bigoted, sexist assholes, and he projects on Summer, and he like, you know, is extremely possessive, like you were saying about like, you know, she consistently made her intentions clear, and it was Tom that caught feelings, and it was Tom that assigned all of this value to it.
Just to buff up like what you're saying, kind of like, and I think that is conveyed like in down to like the film's framing. The name of the film is really obnoxious. Well, some people find it really obnoxiously titled as bracket 500 days. So bracket 500 bracket days of summer, like it's a fucking Kingdom Hearts game or something. And I think that's really interesting because it's like even the title. It's like the title is Days of Summer, but because it's framed as such an obsessive piece, it's like he's counting the days and brackets like it's like an unconscious, subconscious thing. And even the author's note at the beginning, which is like really aggressive, where it's like the following work of fiction, there's no resemblance to persons living or dead, is purely coincidental, especially you, Jenny Beckman, B word. And like from the get-go, it's like everything about this film's construction is from Tom's perspective. And even the narrator, even though it's not Tom's voice, is Tom's inner monologue. There's a scene, Zooey Deschanel talked about it in an interview recently, and I actually hadn't picked this up before, but it's really cool. There's a scene where she's giving us a story about this dream she has about her anxiety of being alone. And then it quietly fades down her voice, and the narrator gets louder and louder. It zooms in on Tom and says how much it means to him that she's telling him this. And the only part he hears is, I never said that to anyone before. So yeah, to back up what Matt's saying, everything about how this film was framed is Tom's projection onto Summer.
Another genuinely fantastic subtle moment is when he's explaining buildings to her. He's like pointing out their architecture, and it's quite a nice moment because he's genuinely passionate about architecture and things like that. But he gives this, you know, quite extended speech about why he loves this building. And then as the moment she opens her mouth, it changes to a new day. So it's just that very typically male thing of like, let me, with a romantic partner of like, let me share my opinion on this thing with you, but it's my thing. And I'm going to tell you why you should love it. I don't want to know why you love it or why you would love it if you cared about it. I want to tell you why you should love it. So yeah, but to continue sort of onto the second act, because this is a rom-com, he must change. You know, he can't just stay the same for the entire thing. And of course, Tom's arc on this movie is like accepting that Zooey Deschanel isn't like fate and everything, and like that he like wasn't entitled to her and all of that stuff. But I think it just gets really muddy. I think the film is really going for it. Like it's so strange to me because that first half is so solidly setting him up for an arc where he becomes a better person and he lets go of all of this stuff. But I think he does. You know, with the final line being, like I'm genuinely glad you're happy, or I genuinely hope you're happy. But I feel like there was a part of the film left out where Tom has to confront how much of an asshole he was, because at a certain point the film stopped being about whether or not like this was real and whether or not he was projecting onto this stuff, but it really just felt like how much of a dick Tom was. And that's, of course, wrapped up in how much he projects onto her. But in how much he projects onto her, he's such an asshole. Like, he's a bad person. And I don't feel like we get that, like, what I was really looking forward to was a moment of someone saying, you are bad, like, or just something happening to him, and he realizes that he's done something wrong, not that something bad happened to him, but that he's a bad person and it's his fault that he is so upset about this situation because he assigned all of this meaning. And I feel like he gets off really lightly. I feel like he just like realizes, hey, it just wasn't meant to be, and that's okay. And like, you know, I'll find someone eventually. Not and like fate isn't real.
He gets over Summer on like a superficial level of accepting
He
it wasn't
really
fate,
does.
but he
yeah.
doesn't actually become a better person.
Thank
and
you.
it's kind of, it doesn't have the Spider-Man 3 moment of Peter being very horrible and abusive to everyone, and then he has that moment where he hits Mary Jane and sees how selfish he's been. He goes home, he takes off the black suit, and he has that moment of growth. Even Scott Pilgrim has this moment of Scott earns the power. In the comics, it's self-awareness where he realizes he's a dick.
Yeah.
And that's like how he gets stronger as a person.
And then in the film, it's this like he gains a power of self-respect because he drags everyone down around him by constantly being this self-deprecating thing that like by assuming that he's not capable of anything, 100%. He drags everyone down with the rest of him.
And he hurts people and assumes that, well, I'm a good person, I can't hurt people. I'm the victim.
Exactly.
And yeah, I think this film totally undoes itself in the last like maybe 5 minutes. It's like one of the worst endings to a film I've ever seen. Not ever seen. I'm hyperbolic. It's a bad ending.
You know, like there was a part of me that was really trying to defend the ending of this film because of that first half. Because it is so scathingly critical of
the first
Tom.
35 minutes of the film, I think, is fantastic.
It's fantastic.
Really love
fantastic. And what a big part of that is Zooey Deschanel. I genuinely had I love Zooey Deschanel in this film, and she does a fantastic job of pretending to be a manic pixie dream girl when really she's just like a kind of whimsical person who is but also quite grounded. She's very like normal and nice.
Yeah,
and
I was thinking about Jessica Day, and I was very curious now that I've been inundated into the world of New Girl. You think it's go around having a bunch of wives to get one wife? I was like, how much of this is going to be Jessica Day? And it was really weird. Jessica Day is very similar to Zooey Deschanel. Like, you've watched interviews with Zooey, she's very Jess, like very bubbly. But Summer is a real character. Like, she's quite cold and prickly and elusive at points. Yeah. She's quite interesting. There's a certain darkness to her. And I think in the interview I watched of her, it was really interesting. She said that she was kind of trying to avoid picking stereotypical female roles. And this role made her excited because she was playing a version of Summer that's in Tom's head. And that distance from the character was really interesting to her. Because you don't actually see Summer in this film. You see Tom's idea of Summer throughout the whole thing.
Yeah, no, completely. And that was one thing that was so thrilling about the first half is you can so clearly see how much of this is from Tom's perspective. But at the same time, you still get a real sense for the reality of the situation. That's really nice. And I think there's genuine real skill and talent there. Like, especially the way that narration is used. That narration perfectly rides the line where if you kind of had your brain off for the first 35 minutes of this film, you could maybe sleepwalk through thinking this was a conventional thing. But if you're at all properly engaged, then yeah, there's just this like irony to everything that's so unobnoxious. Like, it's so genuinely right on the line of like, we're telling you what's really going on, but also we're also totally Tom's view of the world, and that's so wonderfully critical that the exact same way that Tom sees the world, to us as the audience, as hopefully normal, kind people, we see how ironic his internal monologue is. Yep.
Marc Webb talked about the use of music in this film, and he, I think it's like the IKEA date or something. He says, Marc Webb says, I imagine for Summer, this was a very like chill, fun day with someone I'm attracted with. Yeah. But for Tom, this is a monumental romantic moment. And so the music is very like beautiful and whimsical. and he says he used a blue color scheme. This is from Amazon Trivia. He used a blue color scheme to bring out the blue in Summer's eyes. It's almost like everything about the cinematography is inducing, making Zooey Deschanel look as magical as possible. Yeah. And a big part of this film is part of Tom's disillusionment, similar to High Fidelity, a similar film which has, in my opinion, a better monologue, a speech about how, you know, what came first, the pop music or the depression, you know? And this idea of like the way our culture sells love and manipulates us
Yeah.
on a meta level is what this film does.
Yeah.
With using music and cinematography to manipulate us into thinking this is a love story, even though like
Yeah.
Summer isn't in it. Like, as someone who in all ways but physical is Summer, I can tell you the whole time through this film, she's probably feeling really lonely and unsure, and kind of she's with Tom because she doesn't want to be alone, but also she doesn't really have that love feeling that she wants to have.
Yeah.
So a lot of it she's just kind of playing and disengaged. And there's a great bit where they're both watching The Graduate, and it kind of is a very thesis moment of the film of they both watched the same thing, and she bursts into tears crying, the ending of The Graduate of like,
Yeah.
is there any hope for this couple, and is this actually depressing? And Tom's just like, hey, they
Yeah.
got married, that's awesome. And he's like, fine.
Yeah.
And yeah, the idea that watching this film, everyone's going to bring in their own biases, and the trick is you're meant to not like Summer until the film tells you, hey, you're an idiot for not liking Summer.
Yeah. No, literally. There is a hook that comes in. But like we said, I said, I feel like it gets really muddy.
Well, I think that my issue, I always have an issue with the ending. I think Tom's, I sincerely hope you're happy. I take it as genuine. It's just, but it is just like bare
Yeah,
minimum.
that's what I mean.
You
Yeah.
get over someone, and then you're able to want them to be happy, and that's like very normal breakup stuff.
It
But
doesn't
what
mean
this
he's
film
good
needed
now.
is the
Yeah.
whole film. This thing started itching at me. While I was like, what does Summer do? What is her like passion, and like
Yeah.
what does she want in the world? And I just couldn't figure out, because it's like she's the assistant to the card factory guy,
Yeah.
which is a nothing job. Doesn't say anything about what she cares about or desires. She likes the things that Tom likes. Those are the only things we learn about her, like in terms of like what she likes. And we never learn like what did she go to school? Like, did she get a degree? Like, is there a job she's always wanted and is going for? You know,
This is so.
and the reason I love romance films is the magic moment is two complete people coming together.
Yeah.
It is the moment in Blue Valentine where Ryan Gosling reveals that he can sing a bit, or the moment in Before Sunrise when Celine philosophizes about thinking that God is really the tiny spaces in between people, and Jesse just like melts. He's just like, oh my God, like this person. Like when they see kind of the dreams and passions of the other person and fall in love with that. Even a film we covered, High School Musical, had that moment where they both realize their passion for the arts, for singing, is what draws them together. And this film, I have no idea who Summer is. And I was so like, that bugged me so much. It was like, that's got to be intentional, right? There's got to be like, Tom just never ask her, hey,
Yeah.
what did you study, or did you go to school? Like, first day questions, right? Or like, what job would you like to have? I want to be an architect. How about you? And I think what could have made the resolution of this work a lot better is I would have loved a moment, kind of like the, no spoilers, but the Mr. Robot season finale where he makes a move on Darlene, and she's like, wait, what? You didn't realize this thing was happening the whole time? And you have that moment of, oh shit, we've been in this guy's perspective. Similar to Fight Club, the moment when he realizes, oh, I've been really horrible to Marlene. And you get that moment of realizing how skewed your perspective was. I wanted like a moment where Summer, where she talks about, I don't know, getting a job somewhere, and he's like, I didn't even know you were that passionate about thing, and she's like, oh, you never listened. I wanted like a moment of like awareness about how weird it is that we don't know anything about like someone's hopes and dreams. And that never comes. Instead, we get like Tom running away with an awesome lady, and he doesn't get that moment of the power of self-awareness in Brian Lee O'Malley's words, and it's really disappointing.
I feel like the film kind of throws away its entire story. Like, the film chooses a much less interesting conclusion in its second half, and that's that Tom isn't a bad person. It's that he believes in the wrong thing. It's that fate isn't really real, but they kind of, you will meet someone because life just has that in store for you. And it's so weird though that then at the very end, like, it's presented as that kind of thing. Like he was like
He gets what he wants.
he gets what he wants, and like he gets the romance thing. His arc is complete. Like it's so weird. And secondly, and sort of thirdly as well, is that I really feel like they didn't know what they were doing with Summer, because in the scene where they break up, which is shown very early in the film, she says like it's a really great line where she compares them to Sid Vicious and Nancy. I don't know what's her name.
Sid and Nancy. You can
Sid
say
and Nancy of the Sex Pistols, and like
Yeah.
Sid murdered Nancy, and
Sorry.
and like he's like, I'm not Sid, like, you know, like I like I'm not a complete dick, and she's like, no, I'm Sid, and I was like, oh shit, where's this gonna like go? Especially with it being Zooey Deschanel and how kind of subversive that is based on things like New Girl. I was like, oh, that's really cool, and it never goes anywhere. It never goes like anywhere because she's not the bad guy. She was completely honest about her intentions, and
Interesting. I think the
it's-
way I read that was she's worried that being with him is hurting him because she knows she doesn't want this. So like the more she kind of
okay.
keeps him around, the harder it's going to be for him to get over her.
Oh, okay. So that's actually just her being quite nice. Okay, yeah, cool. That makes
Me
sense.
projecting onto Summer, if I was Summer, and let's say hypothetically I've had this exact same conversation, then
But-
yeah, that's probably what I'd hope she meant.
Thirdly, I feel like the whole film I was waiting for the expectation versus reality sequence, but for their relationship. And we don't, and that would have been firstly a really great time to show who she was. You
That would be
know,
really cool.
like the scenes where we see entirely his perspective. Instead, we see a normal perspective. We see an honest perspective, and we hear all the things we didn't get to hear. That would have been really great and truly subversive of the film's first half. Instead, what we get is like Chloe Grace Moretz saying like, "Hey, remember it wasn't all good in the relationship." And the day that they choose to show for it not being all good is the day they broke up. And it's like, well, of course that was a bad day. Like, they broke up. That's a bad day. I want to see the days that led to that bad day. Like,
Yeah.
we never get to see their relationship in reality, and it's really weird.
And I also want to see that with all of the female characters in the film. Like, I really want there to be a moment where there's a trope in male fiction where women are only there either for sex or like emotional support.
Yeah.
So Summer's here for validation and fantasizing, and his sister, who's his only female friend apparently, is here to give him like emotional support. She's like wise beyond her years. Chloe Grace Moretz gives a very funny, great performance. I love
She
her
is
in this
very
film.
good in this.
But
yeah.
From a writing perspective, it's a very non-feminist portrayal. And I would have liked a moment of like of him realizing, oh wait, my sister's been going through like a whole thing. Like maybe something's been happening at school and I just wasn't paying attention.
Yeah.
And his arc is like, hey, I actually have to listen to the people in my life. Joseph Gordon-Levitt said that this film's about not listening and how destructive that is, and Tom doesn't listen. And I wanted that moment where Tom listens to his sister, and you realize she's more than just his advice person. She actually needs him to be a good big brother. I wanted these
just
things
when-
to matter in the end,
And when
but they
Tom
didn't.
comes to terms with that, Tom never comes to terms with his shortcomings in this film. Like, and then the film rewards him for that. It's so bizarre. It spends such lengths. The film is about how much of a dick he is, and he never has to come to terms with it. If it's about the fact that Tom doesn't listen, his arc is not. He doesn't learn to listen. He really doesn't. Like, the film in the first half seems to say like, okay, he is using her to get like emotional fulfillment in his life. He's using like, her to fulfill his dreams of architecture, to fulfill his dreams of like
His
being
fantasies.
an interesting person. And then in the end, he just does the same thing. She reminds him that like love is out there and that it exists. And then he's like, "Oh yeah,
Back at the beginning.
thanks. I'm
Yeah,
gonna go find a cute girl at an architecture interview who is just like me," which is exactly what we criticized. It's
It's it's
baffling.
pretty awful. Like, I would have even. I was thinking. I was trying to think. How could I fix that ending? I reckon I could fix that ending. And I really think do a Wolf of Wall Street or an
So
Uncut Gems. You know, Uncut Gems has the moment where Adam Sandler breaks down and he says, "I'm so
yeah,
fucking messed up. I need help."
it needs that Wolf of Wall
And then he
Street.
gambles
Sorry, go
again,
on.
or like
Yeah,
the Leo in Wolf of Wall Street goes right back into the bullshit he's been doing this whole time. And if the ending of this film was like maybe I was imagining maybe this woman says her name and then suddenly the narrator cuts in and we don't hear her and we hear like autumn kind of as this weird artificial thing and it zooms in on Tom like maniacally, like kind of like slowly
yeah.
smiling, and it's like this really like uncomfortable, gross, like, oh, he's gonna do this shit
He's just
again,
gonna
kind of
keep doing it again and
a
again.
dark ending, like presented that ending as dark and sad would have been really cool.
Yeah, because he's
But
just
it's
doing
so
the
like
same shit.
unironic that it kind of undermines the message of the film, I guess.
Completely. It needs that Wolf of Wall Street like complete hopelessness where you've seen like that first hour and a half of like debauchery and hedonism, and then that like utter crushing moment of like him almost like killing his daughter in a car crash.
Almost
Like,
learning.
and almost like he never has that. He like, and not only does he like go back right to the same shit that he was doing, the film like rewards him for it. And yeah, so
Sucks.
it was just really disappointing. Because I was like, the first half is setting you up for something so interesting, and it just goes nowhere.
I agree. So I guess to concluding thoughts, would you recommend 500 in Summer? I'll start with mine. I think I'll give this a week recommend. Perhaps a bit because of nostalgia and a bit because it shoots for something quite interesting. It ultimately fails, but I think it's an interesting experiment. Um, some parts of it are really dated and obnoxious. Like there's loads of homophobic observation homophobic speculation on whether or not someone is a lesbian, which is never really questioned or undermined. Same with like, you know, gay panic happens in this film. It sucks. It doesn't do good on the subversions. It fails in many ways. I just for that first half though, I will give this like a very weak recommend. One sequence I really love is the opening credits when it's showing their childhood side by side through like nostalgic Polaroid video. And it's this idea that Tom, in his mind, sees them as like living parallel lives, and they were always going to meet up. You know, everything was leading up to this moment when they meet, and then the narrator explaining Summer's like charmed existence of like
Oh yeah, like yeah, she walks down like a bus, and it's like every bus she walked down, there was a record number of like
here it
double
is.
takes.
Yeah, that, and there's also the line where she quotes like a Belle and Sebastian line in her yearbook. A great band, by the way. Another example of this film being the origin story of my music taste.
Yeah,
And
the Pixie stuff in this was very good.
and then that band suddenly becomes the biggest band ever. Like she's this magical realism with Summers in the narration is really cool. And then finally, it even attempts to like deconstruct male gaze. There's a part where Tom's trying to explain why he loves Summer, and the only way he can do it is by isolating body parts that she has and seeing how they make him feel. And this is the textbook definition of male gaze. And it was a moment of like, oh shit, like that's wow, like we're actually, you know, we're gonna deconstruct male gaze here. We're really doing it. And then it doesn't pay off with the goods in the end, you know. But I give it a weak recommend for The Promise. And on the scale of like Marc Webb, like this is the man who gave us Amazing Spider-Man 2.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is probably his best film. So
Yeah.
you know, kudos. You know, this is pretty well made compared to Amazing Spider-Man 2. So yeah, weak recommend.
Yeah, like George said, on the Marc Webb scale, very, very good. Exceptional, actually, on the Marc Webb spectrum. But yeah, it's just frustrating to see a film piss away so much potential. That includes fantastic performances from Zooey Deschanel and Joseph Gordon-Levitt, but especially Zooey Deschanel. She is fantastic in this film. I say that completely unironically. And
I'm surprised you like it so much.
I really liked her. I was just really nice to see her be like, honestly, like slightly intimidating without being like just weird. Like she's not intimidating because she's like really wacky and he doesn't get her. She's intimidating because she's like self-assured and like self-possessed, and it's really nice to see. But yet, like I said, it pisses away a really fantastic character arc because Tom is a character I would love to have seen realize he's a dick and like confront all of this stuff, because I think it would be a really wide-reaching narrative. I think there are a lot of guys like this, and we all know that. But I think it would do a lot.
Guy.
This is the guy. This is guys. This is guys, and like, and I genuinely think though that this film poses itself in such an opening and welcome way that it could change a lot of those guys, because I think like it's, you know, its heart lies with them. Unfortunately, that allegiance leads to the film then going, oh, they're all right, really, just a bit optimistic. Oh, yeah. But their heart's in the right place ultimately, and that's really wrong. He's a bad guy. He says that, like, you know, when she just says hey to him and like that she had a good weekend, it means she was like fucking some guy and like she's a slut. Like, that's disgusting, and this film has nothing to say about that. And
yeah, he calls her a whore multiple times.
Ultimately, he's not punished for that. He's rewarded for it and gets an even fucking hotter architecture babe at the end. Yeah. So how epic is that? Yeah, like
this is no Mad Men.
No. I'll give it a weak recommend because the first half is really great, but that it's completely retroactively ruined. Like it doesn't stand in the film because it's just like everything the film seemed to be saying in that part, it ultimately wasn't. So weak, not recommend. Pretty tragic God. Indeed, because it really had me.
That karaoke scene when they're about to kiss outside but they don't. That's amazing. Electric. That gave me a 13-year-old. Oh man, I like girls now.
Yeah, it really did. I was like, oh, that it really is just great at like kindling that first date feeling of like, are we gonna kiss? Yeah, and it's really nice.
Bum me out, man. Bum me out
too. I was having a really good time.
But yeah, so that's 500 Days of Summer. So I had fun returning to this and discussing We didn't even talk about Ringo Starr.
Oh my god! There's so much Matty music in this film. Like when that, I'm not gonna lie, the Octopus's Garden conversation was very good.
What's worse, liking Ringo Starr because no one likes Ringo Starr, or not liking Ringo Starr because why would you like Ringo Starr? Who is correct in that argument between Tom and Summer?
Oh, it's so hard because I like Ringo Starr because he's great. So I want to say Summer because technically I agree with her, but really I think she's full of shit. So I don't know what my heart's.
But it is super sweet when he goes to her apartment and he sees that she's like drawn out his face, like she really unironically loves Ringo.
She does like Ringo, so I'm gonna go with Summer.
She's here for Ringo.
Okay. and Octopus's Garden is a great Beatles song. I really
banging
love that
track.
It's so good. It's way better than Piggy's. Anyway,
I'll edit this out as well. But another scene I really like of Tom being a dick is like earlier on when it shows him doing the architecture monologue. It's like presented more favorably, but when he's in the bar getting drunk and he's complaining that women don't dress how they used to in 1963, and someone's like, I don't know, dude, like maybe they just like dressing that way. I don't like it.
That bit is very good. That bit is very good.
Quite funny. Yeah. He's so like shitty in that moment.
Yeah.
So next week begins our retrospective. long form retrospective. I will unveil the entire retrospective now. Please. We are doing Joanna Newsom's entire discography.
I knew it. I knew it. Oh, that's so exciting. Oh man.
So how this will go down is we would do we'll be doing Milk-Eyed Mender and Ease. How do you fucking pronounce that album name? Have One on Me. I'm gonna break up into 2 episodes.
Can I interject? I went on a Spotify.
Yeah.
My discography is not on Spotify. I'll find it. Don't worry. The only track
Is it just the Muppets?
only track is the Muppet Show theme. No, it's like, well, this should be easy. Oh, sorry. Go on.
After Have One of Me comes out, this heart-wrenching breakup album. She gets married to Andy Samberg and is brought into the world of Hollywood. So we're gonna do a couple of the films that she did in that period. We're gonna do Inherent Vice, directed by Paul Thomas Anderson, and we're gonna do Pop Star by Andy Samberg, both of which Joanna is in. So super excited for that. And finally, we'll conclude with Divers, her album that came out six years ago. Her most recent album. So yeah,
I'm really excited. It'll be another deep dive of something I've never heard before. So yeah, I'm really excited.
Once again, don't forget to smash that rate button, subscribe, and follow us on social media.
Yeah.
And also, write us. Who do you think was the good guy, Summer or Tom? I mean, on one hand, Tom was kind of mean, but
he was kind of sexy. I think speaking objectively, he's the more attractive.
Remember the age of Joseph Gordon-Levitt when he was just in every fucking film.
Yeah.
Inception and
Dark Knight, Don John. Yeah,
he's gonna be Robin. No, that's crazy.
This is not the time.
Dark Knight Rises ends with him becoming Robin. Yeah. Call me Robin. What are we, some kind of Robin?
Sad Squad.
Anyway.
Okay. Thank you very much for listening.
All right, cool.
Bye.
And yeah, we'll catch you later.